I want to move right now, as we're back, to really the fundamental difference in building a business with direct response advertising versus institutional advertising. And it's interesting to us that, a lot of these people that are so-called marketing gurus don't have a capability of building a business. And they can talk about building a business, and they can tell you how great their marketing capabilities are, but they're really not that capable of building the business. And I want to give you a fundamental understanding of where and how we operate a business. And it comes back to direct response advertising and the nature of quantification of results in everything that you do. One of the things I think is difficult for most business people is they don't measure the results of everything that they do. And in every department, they don't measure efficiencies. Anybody here in a manufacturing background? People that have worked in manufacturing? Okay, a lot of people in manufacturing. In manufacturing, there's a great deal of measurement that goes on into the efficiency of manufacturing a product. How many man hours does it take? What's your cost? If you've ever been to a Subway restaurant, they have everything in portions. Why? They know what the cost of their product is that way. If you go to a restaurant where arbitrarily people are heaping on food without any regards to the cost of food, they won't be in business for that long because their food cost is too high. Manufacturing, in many cases, is a very, very tight margin business and low profitability. However, what manufacturers do well is they quantify the results of what they're doing. And they make sure that they establish certain parameters, and they have to think with a great deal more stringency and accuracy and focus than most people, because their margins and their profits are so small and compared to higher margin products. And the point here is that if you're measuring everything that you do, if you're quantifying results and you're establishing targets, you're not running a business wildly and recklessly. And I want to get that point across to you. I mean, it's just so important. What Mark illustrated to you earlier, at a 2-to-1 versus a 5-to-1, on a 5-to-1, provided that your ad cost is about 35% of your retail selling price, you're getting 100% return on your money. And if you remember, I said, we'd all run to the bank to get 100% weekly. It also carries through for every other aspect of the business. So that if you have a customer service department that you create, one of the hardest things in the world is having 8,000% growth in a year. We've just been through it. I mean, it's a tough experience. People are going, 8,000% growth. Yeah, 8,000% growth. I don't know of any company growing faster than ours in the state of Florida. There might be, I don't know of one. But there's all kinds of things that you deal with. But one of the things that you deal with on an ongoing basis as you're building a company is you start to realize that you need to quantify the results of everything that you do and measure certain people. For instance, we didn't know in our fulfillment department exactly what it cost us for the labor that we paid for to ship a package. Very important element of our business, we just hadn't gotten to it. But if you start to realize what your costs are in everything that you do and start to think about quantifying results, you can build a business by the numbers. And building a business by the numbers is really the safety of this business. And that's what ties into the whole concept of direct response. The whole concept is that if you know what the numbers should be, then you have a certain specific guideline on operating the business. You know where you have to be. And if there's certain developments within your business and departments within your business that you have to quantify their results because they're a higher cost item within your items that you offer or part of your offer, then you know exactly where they should be. And that's why I asked the question about manufacturers. Manufacturers often operate on 3 to 7% net profits. Very difficult. If you make one mistake and you don't quantify your results, you're not going to make any profit. And so they've been taught, the people that come from a manufacturing background understand this. And they understand that element, that if you quantify everything that you do and you know where your cost should be, It's harder to screw up and make mistakes. And that's where direct response advertising begins. It's amazing to me that you could start a business, and this is a frustration for a lot of people starting in a business, is they say, I tried advertising and it doesn't work. No, you just didn't know how to make it work. It does work. There's certain elements that you go through to make it work, and that's why we're here. But people sit there and they don't understand the nature of direct response advertising. The nature is, just like the analogy of manufacturing and knowing what your costs are in everything that you do, and your productivity and your labor hours, because those are relevant to net profitability, you know in this particular case that when you're advertising, you know what your advertising has to bring back. If you had investments and you knew that you could forecast that they could bring back 30 or 40% a week, those would be pretty nice investments. Well, this is the same thing. This is a way of investing in yourself and what you do with more accuracy than any broker could ever give you, or any investment. So that when you finally find what you're going to offer, and you go through the process, and you have a control offer, and you know it's profitable, it's just like specifically going out and forecasting what you're going to make. And so direct response advertising comes down to the knowledge and understanding that you're going to know specifically what it costs for you to offer that product. But it goes deeper in the mindset that if you run your business that way, and you try to make everybody accountable within the business, and know what it is to get the cost of a customer service call, the cost to fulfill a package, the cost to run a record, to bill a credit card. If you know all these things, you start to have an analysis in your business that's based on quantification. Quantification is one of the most missing elements in business today. People don't know what works and what doesn't. And because of that, they run their businesses rudderlessly. They don't know where they're going because they don't understand where they are right now. Does this make sense to you? If you understand where you are at all times, it's harder to screw up and lose money. And so as you start out in direct marketing and you're developing an offer, as you start to build staff and infrastructure, and I think we're responsible now for about 250 people between Florida and also Chicago as far as their incomes. But you understand exactly what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. This is the only business, by the way, that I know of, and the only approach to business that deciphers what your profitability is on a day-to-day basis. Think about that. In manufacturing, the reason I brought that up, but I was involved, I used to go in and turn around companies that were in trouble, bankrupt, insolvent, all kinds of problems. And I started out at a young age doing this. So I started to realize a lot of basic and essential elements of business that most people avoid, like revenue. You know, it's pretty simple in a company. It's either your costs are too high or your revenues are too low. You know, it's not brain surgery here. So I'd go in, the first thing I'd attack was always to increase revenues. And then I'd attack costs. And how I did it was quantification. And that's how we approach everything. So in advertising, if you quantify your results, and you know what your cost per order needs to be, or cost per inquiry if you're using a two-step offer, you know exactly where you are profitability-wise every day. Well, how do you do that? Well, you key ads. And that way you know how many responses you're getting for each ad. One of the things to check when an ad doesn't work is, did you key the ad properly? To know if the order came from that source. If you don't have the ability to quantify the sources, one of the things Mark brought up a little bit earlier is that you could have 100 ads running and you're looking at the overall cost. We knew a guy who was a very big advertiser and spent a lot of money, and half of his ads didn't work. He went on the philosophy if you could buy a TV ad for $10 or less, it's okay. Didn't track the performance of it, but he knew if it was only 10 bucks, that's all right. 50% of his advertising wasn't working. Mark taught him how to quantify what was working and what isn't. Dramatically, his profits increased because he wasn't quantifying the results. This is a common mistake of businesses everywhere. Institutional advertising is just a dissipation of capital because you can't quantify results. Which is another good point I learned a long time ago in real estate and developing real estate projects, that everything comes down to realizing the cost that you can afford to pay for something. Everything. And if you don't know the cost of what you're paying for something aside from your cost per order, you got a real problem. Because you're going to have something that could be 3 times the cost, and you might be able to decrease that cost. So a lot of ways that you make money, and it just gets back to this manufacturing problem we were talking about earlier, where the product cost is too high, is you look at each element and each line item that you have in a business and try to reduce that cost by increasing the efficiency through quantifying what's working and what isn't, and how much it's currently costing you. This is really important, and this is not that complex. I mean, it's relatively simple, just stepping back and saying, what's it cost me to do this? What's it cost me to do this? What's it cost me to do this? Okay, how can I improve upon that? That's one of the ways to quickly increase profits in any direct marketing business. For instance, if you order 5,000 of a product and it costs you $9.22, and you turn around and order 10,000, why not get it for $8.17 and beat up the manufacturer? Because you know that it's cheaper by the dozen. You're ordering more product. Often in this business, because of your lack of quantifying the results of what people are doing that are part of your business, i.e. fulfillment, you can often go out to a third party that's in the fulfillment business, and in some cases get them to fulfill the product for less than you can at certain points in your growth. And other times you're going to be less, but at least you've asked yourself, what's my cost to fulfill? You've quantified it. Interestingly enough, a few years ago, we learned that the best way if you hire people to do fulfillment for yourself internally is to pay them on a per piece basis. And one of the things I learned in developing real estate is that if you fix everything on a fixed cost rather than a variable cost, Mark made the point that many people's income in our business are tied to a variable that's based on performance. But we know what that cost is going to be based on their performance. When you're able to predict what your costs are, you can predict profits. That's how you build businesses quickly. Mark's father should have a book of quotes, because he's got, I won't give you all the quotes. I'm not in an audience where I can. But one of the quotes, you just imagine some of this, but one of the quotes is, the question you have to ask yourself in this business is, how can you double your business and your profits every month? And then force yourself to sit down with the specific action steps to do so, provided that you know what your profitability needs to be on an ongoing basis. You know, it's just like the example that we gave you on a 5-to-1 margin. You're doubling your money every week. If you start out with $1,000 worth of capital in advertising, once you have a control offer, just imagine if you pocketed half that money and reinvested half the money every single week, how big your business is going to multiply. Pretty scary, isn't it? But if you ask yourself the question, and you're not lethargic, and that's a key question to ask from a position of quantification, if you ask yourself, what do I need to do to double the exact action steps? I need to place 75 more ads to double the size of the business, because I'm currently running 75, but I got to find 75 more ad sources. If you do that and you find that 1 out of 5 ads work, you have to place 5 times 75 ads in order to double your business, and quantify the results of those ads, and determine and track the profitability of those ads, so that within 30 days, you've now got 75 more ad sources. And you just keep on repeating that process. 1 month to the next. Now you get 75, 100, you're just keeping on doubling those advertising sources logistically and correctly through quantification. Most of you are visually oriented. When you see something, it's more easy to understand. And when you actually picture your company and put it down on paper, it's easy to perceive what you need to do. For instance, if you double your orders, what other functions within your business have to go up? Does anybody have an idea? What other functions, if you double your orders, what other functions would probably have to go up in a direct marketing business? Pardon me? You have to have more people to answer the telephone. What else? More people to fulfill the product, more people for customer service. So what do you need to do? Well, as you do these things, if you're doing them yourself, you need to say, I need help. Or else what happens is if you grow too fast, you don't have enough customer service, you don't have enough fulfillment. Before you know it, you're losing orders because you can't get them out the door quick enough. We've actually had to stop marketing before to catch systems up. So we learned this lesson the hard way, because the worst thing you want to do ever is to stop making money for a few weeks just to catch up. So if you think synergistically that all these other things are byproducts of the element of you making the sale of a product, then, and you're forecasting your growth and planning, this gets back to planning. Most people have no plan or no vision, and they're also complacent when they hit a certain level, certain comfort level. You know, you hit $30,000, $40,000 net income a month, and you start to think, well, okay, I'll take it easy. When in fact, you could very easily take it from $30,000 to $100,000 net a month with just some adjustments and, more importantly, planning, and then synergistically organizing everything and corresponding it as you're building that particular company. So no matter who you are, you've got to think further with how do I walk away, because that's how you grow. And sure, there's a startup element where you do everything. And one of the wonderful things about being around all these people, you guys all have something in common. You're not satisfied with where you are right now. That's why you're here. You want change. You want to know progressively, how can I make a change? Some of you are doing extremely well, but you want to know how to get better. Well, the best way to get better at what you're doing when you're doing well is to say, here's a target, and I'm going to hit it, and here's exactly when I'm going to hit it. And that's the wonderful element of this business, is by teaching you the elements of quantifying results and knowing what your cost per order should be, and what your cost per product is, and your cost of fulfillment, and your cost of taking the order and processing the order. By teaching you all these elements, it demystifies and takes the risk out of developing a business. And where people fail in businesses, they have no concept of what their costs are relative to what they want their profits to be. And it's just like the analogy of a boat being out in the middle of the ocean without a compass, wondering, where's the coast of the United States? How do I get back? You've got no clue because you don't have any idea where you are.
And what we're talking about is it takes concentration. It's not easy. You have to back away from what you're doing and look forward. It's very difficult. You've got to make plans, you've got to think hard, you've got to concentrate. The easiest thing that we can do is just get in the middle of our business and help the employees get it caught up. But long term, that's not going to do anything for us.
It will hurt you. And so if this helps you with a long-term vision, I hope it does. But the fact is if you force yourself to look forward to the future and think about how you can double your business, and all the other things that relate to doubling the business are ramped up simultaneously, we've gotten pretty good at it, and we specifically told everybody in our company at which stage and what we're going to do week by week. And people were stunned. I remember one time we had a person that was in our customer service department, and she said, boy, I'm glad that rush is over. I said, what are you talking about? And I'm in a company meeting, and I said, we're about to go up 400% in the next 30 days. And she was like, this is, and it's relatively simple to do, but she was just overwhelmed that we forecasted very accurately where the profitability would be. Well, if you're at a 5-to-1 margin, your cost per order is 1/3 of what your retail product cost is selling for. And you're taking out 20% of your profits weekly and putting them in your pocket. And you're taking 80% and reinvesting it. If you teach yourself some simple math and get a spreadsheet program, you're going to start to see where your profits are going to be 3 months from now, with the only variable being, aside from ramping up all the other services that go into your business, finding the advertising sources. But if you know 1 out of 5 work, all that means you do is to find 75 ad sources, you test 5 times 75 ad sources. You can specifically figure out how much your profit's going to be in the month of September when you're in June. Make sense? That's why mastering these skills and understanding that the essence of direct response advertising is to quantify everything you do. And if you carry over that mentality into everything else in your business, then you can statistically build your business step by step. You reduce the risk of going into business. First of all, what you want to do is when you define a job that's relevant and inherent to you succeeding in your business, you do a job description of what that job entails. And you want to know what that person, and in order to communicate to that person what they're doing, so that when they come in, they don't wonder what they're doing, here's specifically why you were hired, here's what you do on a day-to-day, a week-to-week, and a month-to-month basis on a repetitive basis. Let's say that there's 12 consistent things that they need to do on a daily basis to supply and execute their job successfully. If you itinerize those things and produce a small to-do sheet that's really a report to you or to their manager that they have to fill out, it tells you step by step what they had to do. So for instance, to answer your question, let me take a hypothetical example. A person that is working with you has 14 things they need to do on a daily basis in order to ensure that what they do is done correctly. They have a report they fill out. It's a just simple check sheet of yes or no. Here's all the reoccurring things that they do in their job, and they must do them. For instance, at McDonald's, there's a buzzer that goes off with French fries. Okay, if they didn't have that buzzer, they'd burn a lot of French fries. All right, and they tell the person that's running the French fries, when the buzzer goes off, you pull them out. Okay, I mean it's simple, it's mundane, it's kind of funny, but the fact is it's there for reasons to get predictable results. So if you teach a person, you say, okay, here's your job description on an ongoing daily basis. Here's what you do step by step. And as you do these things, we're going to get the result that we want. And every day, to either me or a supervisor, whoever you turn this into, you give them a report of what you've done. And then you can pick up that report, and it's a simple yes or no, with all the daily reoccurring things that they need to do to produce predictable results. And you say, okay, items 9 and 10 weren't done. Why? Now you can analyze where you might have a problem. So it gives you a prediction of result on a daily measurable basis where you can say, okay, this person missed items 9 and 10. We might have a chink in the armor here. Maybe we're deficient. We don't have enough customer service people. Or maybe we're not answering enough phone calls because we don't have enough phone lines. Whatever the case might be. But it gives you a predictable result where you can measure and track and tabulate that person's results on a daily basis. Think of the example of McDonald's having a buzzer going off. They know that if that buzzer goes off for too long, the fries are burned. Well, it's the same thing in your business. Your business is burned if you don't track those people. Now, all this being said, when you have the type of growth that we've experienced, we didn't have all those systems in place. We made tons of mistakes. Tons of mistakes. And we knew what to do, but we couldn't get to all of it all at once. And we consistently keep on trying to put those systems of quantification in place to find out what people are doing on an ongoing basis, getting back to the fact that in a company you're going to have a handful of people that all you have to do is just let them loose. And not only will they do what they're doing, and sometimes the danger is they'll want to do what everybody else is doing. But the majority of people need a consistent direction and a repetition of what they need to do on a day-by-day, week-by-week, and a month-by-month basis to get consistent results for the business. And the fact is all the planning in the world, all of it, will never get you ready for the real war. When you're in the war, there could be a bomb coming from where you didn't expect it, and you've got to readjust. But you've got to get into the mindset that if you've got quantifiable results in everything that you do, and you're poking and inspecting and trying to do things better, as you go through this process, you're going to refine the business. And so it gets back to, once again, that thought of quantifying results at all times. It's not just getting your quantifiable ad cost down and knowing how to get that down. It's going to be taking a couple steps further and orchestrating everything to make sure that you're making more money. And getting back to the thought of wanting to double profits every month. And I'm going to tell you, that's one of or double your net profit every month. That's one of the greatest questions to ask yourself around the 23rd, 24th, 25th of the month. How do I double my profits, and what steps do I need to take this month? And the other answer, there's a caveat to the question that I had just a moment ago, is you also want to give people, for instance, when you're doing specific tasks, you want to determine what that task is that you want them to do. You want to define it. You want to give them a specific timeline of when they're going to accomplish it, and what action steps they need to go through to accomplish it, how much time it's going to take to do those so that you don't get snowed. And they tell you, oh, I'm really behind. They're not working as hard as they should. Even with an outside vendor, you want to do the same thing. If you're talking to a manufacturer and they're manufacturing a product for you, and they tell you it's going to be done in 4 weeks, well, tell me what you're going to do over 4 weeks. How much time does it take to do this? How much time does it take to do this? Because one of the problems you run into in this business is you can't fulfill your product quick enough. Manufacturer's holding you up. You have the potential of losing half your orders. So you then query the manufacturer just like you can query somebody that you're working with. Okay, what do we need to do to this? How many hours is that going to take? Okay, why can't you readjust this and have these people work overtime and do that? Because sometimes it's worth more to pay 15% more for your product than lose half your orders. So you walk them through and you define what has to be done ultimately, what are the components to accomplish that, step by step how many hours or days or weeks or months is it going to take, and when can I expect to get the expected result, so that if they aren't on track, because you know when they're going to be on track timelined on each aspect of what they're going to do, if they aren't on track, you can bring them right on track and say, why aren't you here when you're supposed to be? It's May 7th. You were supposed to be here May 3rd. I'm calling. Why aren't you there? I don't want to hear about your screw-ups. Don't want to hear about your mistakes. Don't have time for it. Fix it. Because you aren't on track. Well, the reason that you can track them is you determine where you want to go step by step, day by day, week by week, month by month. And now you've held them accountable. And the key is that you're holding them accountable. And everybody that's peripheral to your business and peripheral to your profitability, and they provide functions for you, you have to hold them accountable. And that gets back to the concept of quantification.